order. Go over old business. Has any update on Livingston Avenue?
They're still going through the design. There was a meeting about another project yesterday, but I know at the end of the project they had some discussion on that. It's moving along generally on time to get the design done and hopefully get into construction next year.
Okay. Thank you. Just in time, Tom?
Yeah.
Did we put up the no parking school day signs, or did we get the ordinance over on Delavan?
I believe that was done a year ago. I'll double check that.
All right. So I know the ordinance was supposed to put through and then make that no parking school days.
School days, I'm 98% sure, 99% sure that was done, but I'll
All right,
confirm
if you
that.
could get back to me on that, that'd be great. Let's see, what else we have here? Any update on Lee Avenue PSE&G work? As far as they were supposed to dig up the...
They have completed the mains project-wide, and they're only at 30% on services project-wide. I'll get a detailed update from my inspector when he comes back in this afternoon, and I'll let you know where we are with that. I don't believe the services are complete on that.
Because I know one of the thoughts was to possibly put a speed hump on that road.
Correct.
And we said we had to wait for PSE&G to finish that
Correct.
work. Okay. Chris, did you speak to engineering about any concerns about the curbs at Rutgers Village?
No, I think because I wasn't at the January meeting.
Yeah, we didn't have a January meeting.
Oh, okay, it works
No,
out
the
well.
January meeting was canceled.
Because of snow. Right.
Okay. We had an issue with when they're putting the curbing in the village,
Okay.
that now with the new curbs, the road's actually narrower from curb to curb.
I would expect in the inches range, but all right, why yours?
I think it's talking about like functionally because the cars used to creep into the private
Correct.
sector, so now the cars are out. And so
They used to
I think
park on
it's
it.
okay.
They used to
So when
park
they're
on it.
parked,
That's why I was.
I understand.
So when they're
Understood.
parking on the street, on pretty much all the streets
right.
in that area where they're doing curb work, the two vehicles, if they're parked on either side of the street,
You can't get
you
through.
can't get through. Where it
Well,
wasn't a problem in the past,
because
because
people-
they crept on that,
Well-
almost to the easement, or right to the edge.
Part of the curb, the reason having a curb is we want to discourage people parking on the edge because then it breaks the edge of the road,
Sure.
it's freeze thaw, the road doesn't last as much. And the secondary thing is to guide stormwater.
We had two issues, obviously. One was the school buses
Right.
called us and asked us about that.
Because they're the ones having an issue with the cars parked on
They
both
can't get in
sides.
between, and then obviously that brought up a concern for us of us
So we just did, it was Wilcox Road, Halsted,
Stockton.
not Halsted, I beg your pardon, Stockton Prentice, Roberts, Bowser, and Antal. And then the Hobart, the little section off of Wilcox. All right, I
I don't know how to fit
will go back, I'll take a quick look. If we may have to limit parking, that's a possibility.
one side,
Right, maybe. All right,
Yeah.
just so you know.
okay.
Okay. And then at the December meeting, Ms. Moore, back as being in the audience today, brought up she was looking for a lower the speed limit on Livingston Avenue, and I believe, glad not to put words in your mouth, I had on the minutes that I believe the Board of Ed submitted a petition to the state.
I can give you a complete update. The state received from us and from North Brunswick and from the Board of Ed the 3 documents that they required. They have completed their investigation/study. They agree that it should be a school zone. They requested both from the city and North Brunswick resolutions of support for what is known as a TRO, it's a traffic regulation order. Our resolution of support will be adopted this Wednesday North Brunswick's at their, whichever is their next meeting, will also adopt theirs. I asked North Brunswick to give us an original copy, I'll send theirs with ours, so that we are ensured that the state has what they need from us. I don't have a feel for the timeline. Once we give them what we're asking for, how long it takes them to pass this traffic regulation order. But it's definitely the next step. We got the initial approval from the state, now we're just following up with the follow-up that they're requesting from us.
So other than putting up speed limit signs, do they do anything else?
They're going to let us do that. It'll probably end up being our.
Oh, is that what it is?
I
They approve
believe,
the
yeah,
city
if
for
we did the request, then they're going to ask us to put up and maintain whatever we did, put up there. That's my understanding of it. Once the TRO is passed, I'm sure they'll give us a laundry list of what they want. But we're in the process. We're taking the next step. So.
Okay. Have we heard anything about the bus shelter on Albany Street?
I know Russ Marquetta had a meeting yesterday with them about that, but there's some conversation as to whether that should be installed there because, and installed at this time because of the Spring Street extension work that is going to be going on out there in a year or so. The design concept for that intends to move the bus stop to the other side of the Easton Avenue intersection, kind of by where the billboard is against the train trestle.
Really?
Yeah, the transit requested that. They have probably a legit problem there in that the bus pulls over in front of 410 George on Albany Street, lets people on, people get off. Then the bus continues straight down 27, and they have to cross over 2 lanes of traffic to get to that intersection. That's not a good traffic maneuver. So they would like to be on the far side of the intersection so one can have a bus turn out there so they can get out of the lane of traffic, and then also don't have to cross over a second lane of traffic to get in the lane that they're supposed to be in. And it looks like there's just enough room to accommodate it over there. They have a shelter and enough room for a cutout to put in the street.
Just keep in mind that the parking authority is planning, working with transit to build a pedestrian bridge coming from the wellness center. They're extending the platform. That's the plan. We are transit. Extending the platform, and then there'll be a walkway, pedestrian walkway from wellness. So that sounds like the bus stop will be right there.
Well, the bus stop should be between where the bridge is going to be and Easton Avenue. I think there's an area in between that will accommodate that.
That extension is only on the Albany Street side, not both.
Right.
Or the French Street side.
The platform extension.
The platform extension.
Yeah, it's only on one side.
Both sides, just the side that's on
Right.
the French Street side.
I can report I was privy to a conversation with Russell and Tom Laughlin said, even if we do it twice, get the shelter as soon as possible where it is. And then once the project happens, because it may be a year away, then we'll...
Tom was good on that?
Yes, he was.
So
And
that's what I
then
was
we'll
thinking.
redo another shelter, take this one down, so.
So you're going to put the shelter up.
Yes, and then move it probably in a year, who knows what time frame, because sometimes the county can get hung up, but they're trying to take an aggressive schedule.
They never get something.
I'm sorry?
Never get something.
Yeah. That saves Mr. Crowder. I'll ask him another question.
I think that's all I had. Any new business?
The mayor asked us to take a look at the intersection of Van Dyke and Jersey Avenue. The Brunswick Police have reported that from 2015 to 2017, we saw almost a doubling of the accidents. So I reached out to the county. That's a unique intersection in that it's a tri-jurisdictional intersection. The state has Jersey Avenue up to Van Dyke. The county picks Jersey Avenue up from that point all the way to French, and then the city has Van Dyke itself. So I spoke to Ken Prederard of the county. He asked me to forward him the reports. He would do an initial analysis because the state requires very strict warrants that have to be met before they'll consider a light there. then it becomes tricky as to whose light it is, who's going to maintain it, and then that changes a bunch of different, agreements either between the city and the county, or the state and the county, or whatever it is, as to who owns the light, who maintains it, and it's just unique that we have 3 jurisdictions there. First step is we're going to test the intersection as it relates to accident reports and traffic counts if it will meet the warrants as dictated by the DOT. So it's in process.
It's a difficult corner. I take that.
I agree. I have no objection. I understand that it's a tough corner to get at, especially school in and out.
In the morning and once school let out, because they have the folks over social services trying to.
So essentially, if we do a signal, it would be a 4-way signal, because you got to address the outcoming people from the parking area where Social Security is on the point, that whole complex back there on the railroad track side of Jersey Avenue. Unfortunately, even if we do pass one, it's going to take some time, especially if we have to involve the state at a high level. Then it becomes, their review times just drag out the whole process.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Do you have anything else since you're up?
Not at the moment.
Chris? No? Go ahead.
Forward to the presentation.
Okay. Yeah, so okay. Charlie, Danielle, you guys want to flip the coin? Who wants to go first?
First, I would like to say thank you, due to I know some of you don't come to the city council meeting. I would like to thank you for the good job far as with Lee and Lawrence making it passable for wheelchair, doing the curbs and all. Thank you. Also, Handy and Remsen, Ward and Remsen, Lee and Comstock and Lee and Delavan, where you redid the corners there, and excellent walkways where, like I said, they mean a lot for the cars to respect the kids or pedestrians crossing the street. So I thank you for doing that great job. Now, I do have a couple of questions due to where for Lee Avenue in the area, like you said, yes, I see it will be a while before they will be getting done with that. So I was asking with the police station, I'm asking you that if it's possible, if you can put a meter, a meter where it tells you that your speed limit. A permanent meter in both directions in the area, please. I believe that would, due to where it would slow the drivers down, because, like I said, most of these accidents are regarding with speeding through Lee Avenue in the area, due to where, it's been a record of so many accidents in the same location. So I'm asking is, can the city please, the traffic authority please do that, due to where?
Well, we have no authority as a traffic commission to do that, but we'll contact the police.
Well, I will speak at the city meeting. Normally the city meeting goes first, and then the traffic meeting. Yes.
To the police.
Well, okay, I will speak about that at the city meeting. And then also thank you for where I see you working on helping to be approved for Livingston Avenue to make it only school zone hours, make it 15, 25 miles per hour, make it safe for the kids to cross Livingston Avenue to catch the Livingston Avenue bus. I thank you on that also. And my last question is due to where, like I said, I've been patient. It's been over 2 years since it's been approved for us with Lee and Comstock, Lee and Delavan, Handy and Remsen, Remsen and Ward Street, due to where, what is with the light system where that was supposed to be done in December. If I can get any information on when the situation with the lights.
The one item that's remaining, actually there's 2 items remaining specific to the 4 intersections, which are Lee and Comstock, Lee and Delavan, Ward and Remsen, and Handy and Remsen. Specific to the 2 locations on Lee, the last item that the contract shows to complete is the flashing school crossing sign that has the LED on the perimeters. Not unlike the ones you might see on Plum Street at French, So they'll flash, we'll program their times for school days, you know, during the day that they'll stay flashing. Specific to Warden, Remsen, and Warden Handy, it's a pedestrian crossing, not a school crossing sign, but the same motif. It's my understanding the lights are in, and they're just trying to schedule. Hopefully the next 2 weeks we'll have those lights up. So that project has not been closed out, that's still what's required. Likewise, adjacent to Gambino's restaurant, because we had to modify the concrete significantly to comply with ADA, there's a railing that's going to be put on top of that curb so nobody exiting the restaurant can trip over the curb and fall. So those are the last couple items remaining. I expect hopefully in the next couple weeks that'll all be done.
Okay, so for those lights that are there for the pedestrian one, are these the same lights that are being put up due to, like say the ones on Joyce Comer and Delavan?
They don't have it in the road.
No, not the line, but
They're not on demand, they're going to flash all the time.
Oh, okay, because I have to say, I do see with those projects that, wow, just about every corner that has those type of lights, they're not working.
We've had significant issues with
Okay.
in the road. The issue is the water gets in during the wintertime. The only one that you've probably noticed is at Troop and Sedan, we're not having those issues because it's on top of a hill. So the water doesn't get in and then destroy the in-the-road lighting systems. So we feel that doing a very robust flash every study shows the more visibility, the lower the incidence of accidents as a general trend. So the flashing and then the very bright cross, striping is intended to raise awareness. And studies show that when there's more visibility, more awareness, there tends to be lower incidence of accidents.
Okay, thank you. And also to say thank you to all of the people who really helped out with the homeless in January due to where it was so cold, where I heard very good news with them having shelter 24/7, with the shelter by the library, with Elijah Promise, where even with the police officers going around picking up, making sure that the homeless were nice and warm, ordering pizza, thanking all the volunteers and the city also with that. Very good job. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Moore. Yeah, so I think Metuchen has the flags. You grab a flag off the corner. Is that Metuchen or something? When you cross the street?
Yeah,
it's supposed to pop.
they have that.
Yeah, that flag, red flags.
Yeah, it's the most ridiculous.
Yeah, because all it takes is one adolescent or child to do a thing and then you just say,
I'm just passing on what I'm not suggesting that.
Pedestrian isn't the one that's going to kill somebody, it's the driver in their car. It's ridiculous.
Everyone has an idea. Okay, Charlie, I just want to make sure there's no, because you're the star of the show here. So, is there any other questions or comments from the audience? No, good. All right, Charlie, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members of the board. Charles Cradaville from New Brunswick, and I am here today to present on bus systems that serve our city and share with you my findings after a couple months of looking into it and some recommendations that I have for how we can improve those systems. So you all know me, but just so you know where I'm coming from here, I was very lucky to have great parents in the 1990s buy me a computer game called SimCity, and one of my parents is here today, and so I've been very interested in public policy and specifically transportation policy since a young age. I actually have it's the only trophy I ever won was for the Future City competition in 1998 at the Franklin Institute, and it all came full circle. Last month I got to be a judge in the Future City competition 20 years later, so been very into that. I had the good fortune of getting to go to Rutgers, came to New Brunswick to go to Rutgers first. I came to Piscataway though, and I actually didn't like it there. One of the reasons was that the buses didn't really provide that much service on the weekends and during breaks and stuff. So I went to school, I got my degree, I took some classes in planning and public policy but didn't major in it, and I got very involved in local politics. And then in 2010 I had the good fortune of working for a great nonprofit called the Citizens Campaign. And the Citizens Campaign does phenomenal work educating people about how they can make a difference in their communities. And so I learned what's called the no blame approach. And the no blame approach has helped me to work with this commission and the parking authority and many other city agencies to get results, get things done, and to do this in a way where we're not pointing the finger of blame. The saying is right, you point the finger of blame, there's 3 pointing right back at you. Well, so I'm not here today to blame anybody for any of the current situation. I'm here to discuss solutions and find ways that we can work together and move forward. And so an example of that was in 2011 when I used this approach with Rutgers to actually create a new bus route that exists still today, the New Brunswick Shuttle 2. And so that was basically spun off of the original New Brunswick Shuttle route, and I've actually kind of come to regret that, and so I'll tell you why later in the presentation. But 2017, you all probably remember that I brought some concerns to this commission and also to the parking authority about that shuttle and how it was mislabeled and not marked anymore properly, and was able to work constructively with you guys, to work constructively with Rutgers, to work constructively with their contractor to get the bus properly labeled and make it so folks know that this is a bus that they can ride. So just the kind of mission here is that healthy public transit systems include more than one option. They have a diversity of options that are interconnected in an intelligent way. So today we're going to talk about the bus systems, but they also have to connect to the taxis and the trains and the bicycle systems here, which have been improving greatly over my time in the city. So we have some great assets already here in New Brunswick. We're one of only a few towns in New Jersey that can say we have 2 New Jersey Transit train stations. We've got several miles of bike lanes now. We've got 5 different taxi companies with more than 40 licensed taxis. And we have a very walkable community. I'm lucky enough to be able to walk most of the places and not need a car. And you can see this is actually a map from Walk Score, where you can see it's basically restaurants, bars, and coffee shops of how many are within walking distance. So you can see, like here in downtown New Brunswick, we have a lot of places, a lot of options for people to walk to. Some areas we have less, and some areas there's not really anything that you can walk to. But I have a question for everybody. How many bus systems do we have? It's kind of hard to say. It's maybe a trick question. I'll get to it in a bit. First, we've got to talk about the history of transit in New Brunswick. This is a photo from about 100 years ago. You can see this is the New Brunswick train station here, still pretty much the same as it looks today. And right there at the corner of Easton, Albany, and French is what was called a streetcar or a trolley. And that was one of the primary modes of transportation back before the automobile kind of took over the United States of America and to a lesser extent the rest of the world. Unfortunately, a lot of those routes that serve people were torn apart and actually purchased by companies that had interests in shifting to support automobiles. So that would be fossil fuel companies, rubber companies, and car companies. And so they actually bought up those systems and replaced them with buses. And so today we have a network of buses that does some of the same things that those streetcars and trolleys used to do back in the day. But what we see is that many cities are shifting back to something similar to a trolley. There's differences between trolleys and what this is. This is actually a rendering of what a light rail system might look like in downtown New Brunswick. This is a product of a extensive report put together by a company called Urbatran Associates, and that was back in 2001 that this vision was put forth, and the city was involved, the county was involved, Rutgers was involved, all the major stakeholders were involved, but it hasn't quite come to fruition yet, and we'll talk about why in a bit. But ultimately there are some differences between the trolleys. Your trolleys are usually like one car, where light rail is more than one car. And there's some other key differences as well. But what we're seeing is, especially urban areas, shifting towards these rail solutions as opposed to bus solutions. So why am I here to talk about buses when the future might be something different? Well, in my experience of asking questions and hearing from the powers that be about what is possible, I've heard many people bring up, hey, why can't we have a light rail system? Sounds like a great idea. There was this whole study done. It was found that it would actually be the most popular such system in the state of New Jersey if it were built. And the answer is always, inevitably, Yeah, how are you going to pay for it? This would cost multiple billions of dollars. And so the city of New Brunswick on its own cannot afford that. The county of Middlesex can't afford that. So without a doubt, for this to happen, we would need significant investment from state and probably federal authorities. And it's my belief that we don't stand a chance to get that investment from the state or federal government if we're not making the most of our existing transit options that we have. So that's why I'm here to hopefully help us maximize the resources that we already have in existence. So why do we fund transit? Just really quickly on the funding. A lot of the programs and the grants that are available are to connect people with healthcare, especially senior citizens and disabled folks. We also have another good reason that the government funds this type of activity, to get people to work. And that's especially true in areas where there's traffic congestion or folks who have jobs but don't have cars or can't afford cars. Obviously schools and universities, we have a huge bus system here for Rutgers, and special events. You'll see various events around New Brunswick and Piscataway, extra buses showing up. So those are some of the reasons that transit gets funded by the government, but really there's more reasons to do it. And people need to eat. So it's not just special events or going to work, but people need to do their grocery shopping, and you know, everybody has to eat. Some people also like to drink, and New Brunswick has a lot of establishments that sell a lot of alcohol, and from a public policy perspective, we don't want people to drive after drinking a lot of alcohol. So that's a good reason to fund transit. It's also, driving is very expensive for the public. So I don't have to tell you guys, gas, insurance, repairs, parking, and you know, motor vehicle violations, those things all add up and can be very, very expensive. But it's also expensive for the public sector, for the government. Roads, bridges, tunnels, all the infrastructure that we use, the wear and tear happens quicker the more vehicles that are using it. So driving is a very expensive endeavor for our city. It's also risky and destructive. Since automobiles came about in this country, 3.9 million people have died in car crashes, lost their lives. It's something that I'm sure many people know folks who've lost their life or suffered serious setbacks as a result of these crashes. And it's something that we can do something about by creating safer alternatives. Also, pollution kills people all the time, and it accelerates perhaps the biggest crisis facing our planet, climate change. So there's a lot of reasons to find alternatives to driving, but another one that really especially affects New Brunswick, not everybody can legally drive. We have thousands of folks here who are not U.S. citizens and currently cannot get driver's licenses, cannot get driving privileges, and they still need to eat and work and go to healthcare appointments and all those things too. So there's a lot of good reasons to fund it, and here's just a visual perspective on the difference that we can make when we convince people to leave their cars at home or not have a car at all and use public transit. Transit can lower the congestion and the amount of time it takes to get from point A to point B. It also lowers pollution. It can also lower the cost of fixing these roads and highways.
You cropped out the one that has the bicycles next to it.
There was another one with bicycles in it. I'm sure you've seen that one. And so what makes great transit, real quick? High quality experience. That means having a safe, clean place to wait for the transit to arrive. It also means to have a comfortable vehicle that's the right temperature. It means having a smooth ride that's not bumpy or loud, and friendly people, both the driver and the passengers. That's what makes a good experience, but also frequency of service and reliability of service is very important. How often are the buses coming? How often are the trains coming? And here's one that I think we can do better on. Simple routes, simple names. A lot of people don't want to have to do research to find out when and where to get the buses, and we can do a lot to simplify just by simplifying the names of the routes and the way they're presented to the public. And then there's something that, when I was at Rutgers, we were very fortunate to have online technology where we could go to a website and see exactly when the next bus was coming. It's nextbus.com. And now there's, of course, a mobile app for that. And there's other ways, even at some of the bus stops, digital displays that tell you the arrival times of each route. And so these are things we can do to make people's transit experiences better and ultimately make their New Brunswick experience better. What makes a great bus? Electric buses. That is the way things are going. I'm very pleased to report that after talking to a lot of people about this, electric buses are the way of the future. So there's a few reasons for that. First of all, they have 0 emissions of pollution. They're not spewing diesel fumes into the air. At the end of the day, they cost more. They cost, on average, $300,000 more than a regular bus. But over the course of their use, they offset that cost by savings both on fuel. You do have to fuel them with electricity, and that costs some money, but it costs significantly less. And the maintenance of an electric vehicle is much lower than the cost of maintaining an internal combustion engine vehicle. It's also healthier for the passengers, for the drivers, and for everybody who's living in this city where the buses are driving around. Great buses are accessible to riders with disabilities. That is a must. Also, great buses have a GPS tracking device on them that connects to those mobile apps and websites and smart bus stops so that people can find out when the next bus is coming and have it be reliable. So here's a little bit of a success story presented to the parking authority that I thought it might be a good idea to have a bus shelter outside the Wellness Plaza, and to your credit, the parking authority stepped right up and put one there because it's going to connect people to that healthy food at that grocery store. It's going to improve ridership on the bus routes that go past it, and it's ultimately going to give people a place to wait, whether they're waiting for a bus or a cab or a person who's picking them up, and ultimately improve their New Brunswick experience. So that was...
That's not what it looks like today.
This is under construction.
Just want to make sure.
This is made my day to see this. I was thrilled to see this move forward. And I know it was talked about today, but you guys did approve and hopefully going to move forward with this bus stop right here at 410 George Street. You can see somebody sitting on the side of the building here and others waiting without shelter. This is a prime location for a bus shelter, and I'm glad to hear it's moving forward. There's another key location right across the street here. This is where Coach USA stops their buses. Could use one there. Here's another one, and we could go through all day the different spots that might need a bus shelter, but I came here to give you guys a bigger picture. So let's talk about the various bus systems that exist. This one really bothers me because there's still no shelter here. This is the biggest bus stop in the Rutgers bus system.
Is that the yard?
That is right by the yard, yeah.
There's one there. They play one there.
Okay, good. I look forward to that. And so it's the largest university bus system in the United States of America. It is very significant. It's free of charge to anyone. Not everybody knows that, but anybody can ride it, any of the routes, and they have some pretty impressive routes. Some of them run more than 20 hours a day until after 2 in the morning. They've got 9 different routes plus 4 shuttles. Now the only problem is that these routes vanish on the weekends and during the time of year when Rutgers is not in session. So they're not necessarily reliable if you need it to commute to work. And summer break is several months, so it's not totally reliable, but they do have the best possible option for tracking the buses, like I talked about, NextBus, which is in real time. And Rutgers has, for the past several years, contracted with a company called First Transit. So First Transit provides the entire system, the drivers and the buses, and Rutgers, actually I learned, pays a flat rate per hour per bus. So it's very flexible if they want to make changes. $78 and change per hour per bus, regardless of where it's going or how big the bus is.
Charlie, one second, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
They bid that out? Is that what they do? Do they bid out?
Yeah, it's a 15-year contract.
15 year?
Yeah, 5, 5, and 5.
Oh,
Just
Yeah.
okay.
And so what the the person in charge of this at Rutgers told me is that they believe they're getting the very best price possible because they have such a large system, and they're using this contractor giving them a flat rate. So they're in a good position there. So here's an example of one of those smart bus stops there. This is also on College Avenue, and it tells you exactly how long until the next bus comes. These are all the routes that we have. We don't have to go through them all, but there's a couple that I am going to focus on. The double E and the F. The double E is really the route that's most useful to non-students. It, of course, connects the Cook-Douglas side of town with the College Ave, downtown side of town. And so that's one we're going to focus on, but also this quick shuttle. Now there's two of them, the New Brunswick Shuttle 1 and the New Brunswick Shuttle 2, which goes around the 5th and 6th Ward areas near Rutgers. Okay, NJ Transit also has a bus system. I'm sure you all have seen them around. 5 major routes that connect New Brunswick to some other towns. So they all stop at the train station here. Some of them have weekend service, and they go to places like some of the malls in the county, also the county college, very important for folks who are studying there, and Old Bridge. It costs $1.70 per zone, so it's a little complicated to figure out exactly how much it is, but each stop actually has a 5-digit code for text message updates. So this is what you'll see if you go to the train station bus stop right now, and if you want you can try it out. You just text, the number is MyBus, so 69287, and I'm going to go ahead and just do this now. So you would text this 5-digit number to that number, 23497, and within a few seconds it'll tell you the next few buses that are going to be stopping there. So I can see in the next 15 minutes there'll be the 814 going to Middlesex County College, and then 7 minutes later the 814 going the other direction to North Brunswick, and then at 2:35 the 811 to South River. And
is that the Somerset Street stop?
exactly. This is on the Somerset Street side. This is where all of these routes do stop. And the only one that's a little questionable is there is no 8A to Jamesburg. So that's something that ought to be changed. They probably mean the M1, which I guess goes to exit 8A on the turnpike. So speaking of which, this is the system that takes you there. This is the Middlesex County Area Transit System. They are facing cutbacks, and they've had to cut back in the past few years, but they still do have some routes. It's basically 6 different shuttle routes. 2 of them go to New Brunswick. They're all a $1 suggested donation, so you don't have to pay if you don't want to, but they do have a thing you can put money into. What they are shifting towards and doing increasingly less of the shuttles and more of this is curb-to-curb service. So this would be only for people who are over age 60 or disabled. You have to make a reservation, and you have to pay $3 each way, but they'll take you basically anywhere in Middlesex County. This is not tremendously useful to New Brunswick residents because New Brunswick offers its own service that doesn't cost $3. That's very similar. These shuttles are, and the curb-to-curb is Monday through Friday only. The Saturday service ended last April. And unfortunately for these shuttles, the information is hard to find. It's often conflicting or confusing. The best source is actually the City of New Brunswick website, which has the most up-to-date information. The county website is a little bit behind, and there's also tons of pamphlets out there that have outdated information at various locations. So again, there's 2 of these routes that go in New Brunswick. One of them goes all the way to 8A on the turnpike, the Jamesburg area, and for some reason they stopped the North Brunswick Walmart service recently. Now the M5 is the major one. It's the most popular route in the whole system. It is basically the Jersey Avenue corridor and the 2nd Ward neighborhood in New Brunswick, and it even goes as far south as the Adams Lane area in North Brunswick. The city does pay about 40% of the cost towards this system, almost $129,000 a year.
That's specific to the M5 route or the whole system?
Specific to the M5 route.
Gotcha.
And it's a combination of 2 routes that were actually kind of smashed together back in May 2014. There used to be an M4 and an M5. and now it's just one big route, and I'll tell you a little bit later why that's probably not the best move. But New Brunswick does offer their own bus service, as I alluded to before. It's a great service. It's free for elderly, disabled, and low-income residents, and it's Monday through Friday, 8 to 4. They do curb-to-curb service for medical appointments and social service agencies. They also sometimes have taken people to supermarkets as well. They've got 6 vehicles that the city owns. They have a full-time driver and 6 part-time drivers. And just last year alone, they did 17,000 total trips. So it's a bit...
Are they limited to where they can take you? Is it strictly within New Brunswick, or?
No, they do go outside New Brunswick.
Type of rides limited.
Yeah, it's supposed to be only for medical or
Oh, I see.
or social services appointments.
See your friend.
I get you.
Yeah, well, you can take it to your doctor.
Exactly, so 46,000 miles last year alone on that. Somerset County also has buses that come into New Brunswick, a couple of them. The Dash and the Cat 1R shuttles, they both stop at the train station, but it's only during rush hour. It's only basically during the morning rush and the evening rush. It's $2 fare per ride, and that is a mandatory fare. One of them goes up to the Davidson Avenue area in Franklin, the other goes all the way to Raritan Valley Community College. And previously they had the routes go a little deeper into New Brunswick and even into North Brunswick. Some of them would go up the Joyce Kilmer Avenue corridor, but they stopped that last year, and I believe the ridership has gone down a little bit because of that. So there's also private bus systems serving New Brunswick. Of course, we have a major bus station right here on Route 27, takes you to New York City, other destinations all over the state. That's the Coach USA system. Our bus is a intercity bus system that can take you all the way to Washington, D.C., and I think it was a year ago they started offering service from downtown New Brunswick. And also there's, of course, many institutions that do their own services. So often medical facilities, nursing homes, staffing agencies sometimes have their own services. So there's no clear answer on how many bus systems serve New Brunswick. They do different types of things, but I did promise we'd talk about the double E and the F. Basically, the double E is the main route at Rutgers that serves non-students. It does go through downtown, so if you're, let's say, over by the Lord Sterling School and you want to get to the train station, that'll take you there, or vice versa. And the F basically is the same route, but it skips downtown and goes down Route 18 and just kind of connects the two campuses. So the double E is the most useful route that Rutgers offers, and you can see it's, they run a lot of buses. This is a snapshot from nextbus.com, so you can see at this time of day, it's probably around 6 p.m., they've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different buses between these two routes, actually 9, I think. And they're pretty frequent, so this is the schedule. You can see that actually the double E starts at 6 a.m. and goes all the way until 2:36 in the morning, so that's more than 20 hours a day. Again, this is only when Rutgers is in session, only during the weekdays, but it's a very significant offering, and at the most frequent time, it comes every 9 minutes. So compared to some of these other routes I studied, this is a pretty phenomenal offering.
So at 2:36, is that Friday night to Saturday morning, 2:36?
Yeah, they do it on Friday nights till
I'm just saying, because you're going up in the beginning, you know, a lot of bars in town, so you grab the bus.
last call at usually 1:45. Yeah, so basically of the 9 full-fledged routes, the double E is most likely to be useful to non-students. Now, I do have a few recommendations for how the route could be improved to even better serve New Brunswick. So basically, the way it works now, the F bus basically takes Commercial Avenue to Saddam Street. It goes past Sacred Heart Church. There's really no reason the double E could not do the same. It just have to make a right and go down Commercial Avenue, and then you could have a stop at Sacred Heart Church that would allow folks who live in that neighborhood to enjoy the benefits of this system. There also is really no stop on this side of the street for a little while, so you could have one at Bravo, and that would connect people to that supermarket. There is a bus stop in front of the Exxon here at the corner of Commercial and George, but it's not a great stop, it's just really a sign. And if the city and the Board of Ed could work together, you could maybe move it over, and instead of being in front of the gas station, it could be kind of towards the edge of the Lord Sterling School, and you could put a shelter there, it could be good. Also, Hope Manor, there is a bus stop where some buses stop, but not the Double E. So this would be something worth talking to Rutgers about, adding some stops in this area.
What's the bus that stops in front of the, it's off Commercial Avenue, the public safety?
That's 55 Commercial, but
That's where he has RUPD.
Yes,
that's right there.
the F stops there,
That's the F?
but not the Double E.
Gotcha.
The Double E stops in front of the police station on George Street.
George Street.
Right, so they both kind of hit the same area, which is fine. But it would be nice if they could actually make a stop here at Sacred Heart. And so obviously we should be pushing for Rutgers and First Transit to phase in electric buses as well. That's something that would benefit everybody, including the planet. And we should really be pushing for expanded service on the weekends and during those break periods as well. And yeah, those are my recommendations there for where some of these stops could be added. Also, if you wanted to, you could take a little venture into the Sears parking lot. It's only a half mile, and you could actually take people directly to Sears, as well as the entrance there to the Dewey Heights and Tove Manor neighborhoods, and serve more folks there with a very limited diversion from the route. Okay, so the New Brunswick shuttle. This is the one that's near and dear to my heart. I used to ride it when I was a student. I used to ride it when I lived in downtown. I've worked with Rutgers to change it, and I unfortunately feel that some of the changes that were made hurt ridership. What happened was I presented an idea for a route that I thought would be a little better, and what ended up happening was a compromise. They split the route into two. So there's a New Brunswick Shuttle 1 and a New Brunswick Shuttle 2. And so now, instead of the bus coming every 15 minutes, it comes, half as frequently, because there's, instead of two buses on the same route, they're two separate routes. One kind of goes clockwise, one kind of goes counterclockwise. It's also just more confusing. People don't necessarily know which one serves them. It's also confusing because it serves like the Colony House and Landing Lane Apartments there in Buckaloo Park. It serves them, but only during the peak hours. So, it can kind of be a little bit confusing. When I lived out in 10 Landing Lane, it was, useful during the peak hours, but then non-existent, and I don't necessarily understand the logic behind why that was ever that way.
I think it was, if I could just interject, if I remember correctly, one of the thoughts was that to grab people who worked at the hospitals, they would grab the shuttles, they get in the car and bring them in.
St. Peter's
I was
House.
wondering.
It's the train station, no. I mean,
Right, the train station.
I wrote the grant when the service started. It was funded by New Jersey Transit. We had a subsidy for it. We get Rutgers in there as partners, but we didn't think there'd be any demand up there other than at the peak hours. And if you're running up there, it adds 5-7 minutes to the route. And if you do that, you get less service on the rest of the route. It takes longer to get to the rest of the route, and you're not picking up any riders during those non-peak hours. You might serve a couple of people, but not many, and you're delaying people on the rest of the route.
Understood. I have some suggestions on that. Ridership has declined for a variety of reasons. I think the main one is there's not really many shelters along the route, so people don't know that they can flag down the bus. It's kind of different in that respect. And it's just, in general, confusing. This is what's currently available on the Rutgers website for it, so you can see it's a little bit more confusing than necessary. And again, I take full responsibility for making some of those changes. But some suggestions that could improve the service. So just to compare it to other routes, it's really only like 4 miles long right now. And so with very minimal changes, it would still be under 5 miles, and that would be smaller than all the other routes still. So what could happen would be, obviously, phase in electric buses and boil the routes down to a local and an express rather than a 1 and 2. So you can have one that does a super quick loop and one that deviates a little bit to hit some additional places. One of those places would be the New Brunswick Farmers Market, right? The New Brunswick Farmers Market, a lot of folks shop there, and stopping there would improve access to healthy food. Additionally, there's a new building up on Maple Street, an apartment building. It would be nice if the bus went there. The only catch is to get back onto Lewis Street, Brookside Avenue is a one-way, and it's not the right way. So I would recommend actually changing Brookside Avenue to a one-way the other way, and the bus would be able to hit these areas on the local route. The express route could still do what it does today, just head on down Lewis Street. Also, instead of going straight through this light at Easton and Ray, you could make a left at the light and stop right in front of this rather large apartment building as well. Same company that built the one on Maple Street. This is where their headquarters is. It also has a lot of students living there and a lot of folks that would benefit from this service. It's, I think, 205 Easton. They call it the Bookend Building, and adding service there would be good. Additionally, I would recommend that instead of just going all this way to hit Colony House and 10 Landing Lane, the bus could go a little deeper up Easton and stop at the sort of west entrance to Buckaloo Park, Easton and Lincoln in that neighborhood. I don't quite know what to call that neighborhood, but adding service there would be awesome, right, for the folks there. And it would be, again, only the local route would do it. So the express route could go right here and go head on down Senior Street and keep that tight loop. But then you'd have a local route that would hit some additional locations. And the only catch is...
It doesn't save you anything. As you go in that Easton Lincoln entrance, to get to the Colony House, you got to go all the way around the park.
Which is why we would change the traffic pattern in the park to allow the local shuttle to swiftly move through the park. It's just a recommendation, but I think it would be something that would improve the usage of this route. Okay, now we get to this one, the M5, which is now a monster of a route that basically starts at the train station, goes all the way up the Jersey Avenue corridor, all the way out to Aldi, back down to this dangerous intersection that was discussed today, and up all the way down to basically Adams Lane, or the Adams section of North Brunswick here, and then it goes back and hits the same exact stops that it just hit, and then goes back to the train station again, and then goes and zigzags through the Second Ward and goes all the way through. So this is a bad idea. It was combined, and now it has a name that's not exactly the best marketing. The M5 Jersey Avenue Brunswick Commercial Avenue Shuttle.
How long does it take to run that one route?
About 2 hours.
2 hours?
Yeah. So I wrote it a couple times, and it was, there's room for improvement. So first of all, it's not a loop. Even though it could be a loop if you wanted to, you just have to head on down Route 1 here and you could make it into a loop. But for whatever reason, it's not a loop. It's just kind of two routes that are connected. It's a 2-hour route, and it stops twice at some of the same places, so which really causes confusion, because if you're getting on the bus, all you know is it's the M5. You have to basically ask the driver, well, are you the M5 that's going this way or that way? And there's a lot of room for improvement, and you can even just see the way the map is laid out. It's confusing. There's a lot of room for improvement on this route. And since the combination of the routes, ridership has plummeted. So I actually went ahead and got the data for the past 7 years, and you can see the peak ridership was in August 2012 for all of the whole MCAT system had almost 40,000 riders that month. And November 2017 was the lowest. It's now less than half that. The major change was when the M4 and the M5 was combined.
17,000?
17,000, and that's for all of the 6 shuttles. You can see that the M4 and the M5 were doing pretty good, but when they combined those routes into one, it took a nosedive. And so also Saturday service ended last year, and so I'm very concerned about the future of the county's shuttles, specifically this one, which still is the most popular one.
Why do you think the ridership drops so much?
I believe that, you know, the combined route is confusing, circuitous, and
It's a 2-hour route.
it's
Okay.
way too long.
Yeah, they run one bus one direction, one bus the other direction, so a bus will come by once an hour, but if you want to get from Renson Avenue to the train station, and it's the bus going the other way, you got, you know, an hour and a half circuit route rather than, you know, 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah, and think about it, it's a cold day, there's no next bus service, so you don't know exactly, you know when it's supposed to come, but
Right.
if it's ahead of schedule or behind schedule, you could be waiting as much as an hour for the bus, and so that's a big part of it. So I have some recommendations. I would basically phase in electric buses, obviously, and add the GPS in there so that people could get that real-time data, but also split the route into one loop that serves the Jersey Avenue corridor, that was the most successful of the routes here, and one that serves the second ward. So that's kind of the purple here would be a proposed new route. And so you could offer express routes that would stay local in New Brunswick and keep that tight loop, just sort of to do that Jersey Avenue corridor. But you could also have a local route that would go a little further out of the way and hit some key places in North Brunswick, be able to take you to the new Trader Joe's, to the Walmart, and ultimately to the municipal building and the senior housing, the senior center there. And that could still provide the service that exists today for Adams Lane and these industrial area here in North Brunswick, but you would also have one of the routes running an express. So instead of having one that goes one direction, one goes the other direction, have one that runs an express route that focuses on getting the quickest time, and another one that focuses on hitting some of these places in North Brunswick. So after my analysis, I came up with some key problems with the current systems. The first one is the fragmentation. It's pretty obvious that none of these systems are working together as well as they could. Like I said, the best source for information is the city website, so the city deserves credit for putting that all in one place. But on the ground level, there's very little coordination. Just one quick example. My first time was riding the M5. I got to the Aldi, and I saw that the other M5 was coming. And I said, oh, I want to see the rest of the route. So I'll hop off here, I'll get on the other M5. And the guy, you know, kind of questioned me and said, well, where are you going? I said, I'm just going back into town. He said, well, no, I'm going to North Brunswick. I said, okay, I'll go to North. He said, no, I'm going to North Brunswick, then I'm taking my break. I said, okay, you know,
Obviously, you didn't want to on the bus.
yeah, I was pretty much denied access to the bus. And I said, okay, well, you know, I guess, and he said, don't worry, I'll be back in an hour. He said, I'll be back in an hour. This was a cold day, so I don't know whether he wanted me to wait in the parking lot for an hour or wander the aisles at Aldi for an hour. But my college education, you know, helped me perceive that there's a giant bus station across the street that Coach USA runs. And so, you know, it's not necessarily his job to tell me that, you know, Coach USA offers a private bus service that you can get back into town with, but it would have been nice. And, you know, just from a customer service perspective, welcome to New Brunswick, you know, it would be nice to have a little coordination there. And so I went to Coach USA and took the bus into town. It's $3.15, and it's a very nice bus. But in general, the fares, the hours, the days of operation, the frequency of service varies very widely, so it's hard for people to make sense of it and keep track. Also, the information is almost always available only in English, and even then, it's sometimes inaccurate. So a lot of room for improvement on just the information aspect of it. Many people are simply not aware of the services that exist. I imagine some of you might have learned about some things you didn't know today, and I would bet that a lot of folks who live in New Brunswick who are not English speakers don't know that they can ride the double E and that it's free.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of people know that they could use the rest of the bus.
Yeah, so
They assume that you assume.
yeah, exactly. It's a logical assumption, but it's something that we could kind of you know, put the truth out there. And so another problem is that Rutgers service is awesome, but it's only during basically 153 days a year when school is in session and not on weekends. Also, as I pointed out, shelters are only present in a handful of locations. The city's doing a good job to try to address some locations, but there's a lot of room for improvement there too. And ultimately, the M5 and the New Brunswick shuttle need to be modified and simplified. I think there's room to optimize them. So, before we get to the proposal here, the perfect system would look like this, in my view. One system that puts the focus on our city. Simple routes with logical names, not going to confuse people. Prominently marketed with easy access to the basic info in multiple languages. And a convenient website and a mobile app so that people can track the buses and know what their options are. Perfect system would have reliable and frequent service that meets high standards of quality. That means clean, comfortable, accessible electric buses with bike racks. That's an important thing. Also, standardized, reasonable fares that people can predict, or better yet, no fare at all. And hours of operation that are standard. Year-round service 7 days a week with express service during peak periods. And of course, safe, well-lit shelters with seating and accurate route information posted at the shelter. That's really going to be helpful so that people can just go to the shelter and see what to expect there. That could include digital displays that show the real-time arrival data so you know when your bus is coming, but it could also include a public safety component. Some of the Rutgers bus stops, you'll see blue lights. Those are emergency phone systems that connect to the Rutgers police. So if somebody is there and has an emergency, they can immediately call for help. Okay, so we need to launch a city bus system. Why? Well, it's going to connect people to job opportunities, healthcare, healthy food, and education, but most of these pieces are already in place. They're just not optimized or connected into one coherent system.
Charlie, excuse me.
Yeah.
I see you taking pictures. Can we get a copy of this?
Of course.
Okay.
I'll be happy to provide that, and I will have a handout in just a moment. So, setting those uniform standards for hours of operation and quality of service is going to simplify and improve the overall experience of users. And by centralizing the marketing and information about these services, we can actually maximize the positive impacts of buses on the city's economy. And so I know it's hard to live in New Brunswick and not notice all the growth. Population's going up, new buildings are going up, and if we increase the bus ridership, we can encourage growth without exacerbating the traffic and parking problems. We can do it in a way that will ease those problems and still allow for growth. So how do we get there? It's a big idea, I know, but there's two options. So the first option is we can piggyback on that Rutgers contract with First Transit. They're getting the best price possible from a huge vendor, and we can work with them to expand service in a strategic way. It's something that I was surprised to learn that it's so straightforward. $78 and change per hour per bus, regardless of the size of the bus or where it's going, or what hour of day it is. $78 and change per hour. Option two is the old-fashioned way. We can buy some buses, hire some drivers, launch our own city bus system to strategically supplement those existing services. But really, whatever we do, whichever path we take, we're going to have to partner with Rutgers, we're going to have to partner with the county and other stakeholders to unite some of these existing routes into a single, unified, stable, reliable system that has those high standards, that has one uniform, catchy name, and a centralized hub of information so that people can access all this in the same place instead of having to go to 5 different websites to find out which buses run in our city. So what would it look like? Forgive the crude Microsoft Paint mock-ups here. I, worked out a couple of names that might be good. The Bruns bus or the Brunswick bus. I never really was a fan of the Brunswick play on words, but I've come around.
So well to you.
But I've come around. I've come around on it, and I've come around on it, and I believe that actually Brunswick bus is the best possible name.
There you go.
And I think that And I think that so first of all, we would need to create that brand and market that brand in a bigger way than we have so far. But we'd also launch a website that would be a hub of information about transit. It doesn't have to just be buses. The nice thing about the word Brunswick is it can be more than just buses. It can be eventually light rail. It can also be bicycle, pedestrian amenities. It can be other services. And so I give you here the Brunswick shuttle system. This is a kind of sim city of its own. Okay. And so what this is basically taking some of these existing assets that we already talked about, that already exist, and just naming or renaming them in a simple way. And I think the simplest way is to use colors. So the double E and the F could very simply become the Scarlet Shuttle. Makes sense. It goes to Rutgers, and you'd have the double E would be the local, and the F would be the express. So this is what the Scarlet Shuttle local might look like, and you could, mark up the buses in a way that tells people that they're part of this new system that's free and open to the public, and you could even say where it takes you on the bus. Here it tells you. Now we need to optimize that M5 shuttle, so that's what the green route is here. You could use any color. I just know that the county has a green logo, and maybe they would like to market themselves with the green shuttle. And then the New Brunswick shuttle could be rebranded as the blue route. And then we'd have to kind of pick up what we leave off with that M5 route and not leave these neighborhoods behind in the second ward, and actually launch a shuttle there. That would be the purple shuttle. And so you can see here, this is just a kind of a vision for what it might look like. We could, obviously, the details need to be worked out. And ultimately, we want to work towards shuttles that connect us to other communities too. I know Highland Park is really eager to have a connection to New Brunswick with buses, specifically ever since the L route that Rutgers used to run was taken away several years ago. I know the mayor there and others are really interested in having some type of shuttle. So if we get our get our ducks in a row and have a good system, we could be expanding in no time to work with other partners. But of course, the question, how much would it cost? And so this is not cheap. It's an important thing. But I actually did price it out because we have this flat rate that we can talk about. So this would be if we use option 1 for everything. It could be a mix of option 1 and option 2, but option 1 to use the Rutgers First Transit contract. We supplement the double E and the F to offer year-round service, 7 days a week, with at least 2 buses for 15 hours a day. It would be $500,000 a year, $499,000.
What's the head time on the double E road?
The best time is like 9 minutes.
And how long does it take to do the double E route?
It's a little less than an hour. So if you have 2, it would be.
And then you got 30-minute head time.
Yeah,
instead of 9 minutes.
Yeah, I know. It'd be better than nothing, though.
And those buses are packed.
Right. But on
So you need more than 2 buses. So up that figure there.
Okay, well, I'm saying right now there's 0. Right now they're not doing anything on the weekends as far as the double E or the F. So this would be a way for the city or partners to step up and offer that service on the days when there's no buses running on that route. And Rutgers can keep doing whatever they do with the weekend routes that they do run, or the what they call the all campuses route that they do run. But the city could step up to make sure that at least there is a double E running, or 2 double E's in this case. And 15 hours a day would mean basically 7 a.m. to 10 p.m., which, not the full 20 hours that Rutgers runs it, but at least have that baseline of 15 hours a day. So that's what all these figures are based on. So the M5, we're talking about expanding it a little bit. It's basically, usually you can't catch one of those after 6 p.m. This would be expanding it a little bit, 4 more hours. So we're talking 15 hours a day, 3 buses on weekdays, 2 buses on the weekends, and that would cost almost $700,000.
Charlie, I got a question for you.
Yeah, of course.
When you're talking about, for instance, the Rutgers double E bus, why would, it's already running 5 days a week. Why would the city pick up the 7 days a week instead of just to say the 2 days it's not running?
Well, you know, some people work on the weekends or need to use the service on the weekends.
What I'm saying is the city.
You say it's already running Monday.
It's already
Why
running.
not have Rutgers do it?
Yeah, well, let Rutgers do what they're doing the 5 days a week, and then suggest maybe 2 days a week just from the city side of it, instead of saying 7 days a week. Just
That's exactly what I
Weekend
propose.
shuttle that still goes, I mean, you can still take a bus downtown, Rutgers bus downtown on the weekend.
You can. The
Frequency.
times are even worse than 30 minutes though. And
But it's because there isn't the demand.
again, you know, this is something that a lot of folks don't even know that they have this option, and so part of it would be for it to be consistent, so that the city could pick up the 2 days a week that it's not running, but even more importantly would be to pick up those full weeks when it's not running in the summer, spring break, winter break. Those would be really important for consistency, because if you needed to commute, you know, you can't tell your boss, oh, well, Rutgers isn't in session, so I'm not going to go to work.
I mean, obviously the Rutgers bus, the intention is for Rutgers students. Yes, other people can run it, can hop on it. Nobody's going to stop, because it would take forever to check everyone's ID to say, you're Rutgers, you're not, whatever. So that's why they just pretty much allow anybody. But the whole purpose of the Rutgers bus system is for the Rutgers students, not for the everyday other person.
Yeah, another interesting thing I learned, since we're on the topic, Rutgers did roll out a system in Newark, and they actually do check people's IDs, and it's basically, you know, I think the hospital, NJIT, and Rutgers, and depending on which ID you show, they keep track, and they bill accordingly to those things.
They charge the entity back?
They charge the entity for, you know, they charge for it. Now,
But then
They're not collecting fares.
Right,
They just
so
walk
if
away.
it's a hospital, they'll bill the hospital back for the use.
But they're not letting anybody who doesn't.
and if you don't have an ID, you're not allowed on the bus, so it does, you know, lead to...
Catch-22.
Yeah, so I would, you know, want to maintain what we have now, but I think that there is a way to expand it. And so this is just a you know, a vision of what could be. And so the quick shuttle actually is running 20 hours a day, and might not need to run all 20 hours a day, so you could take that down to 15, but just make sure it runs every day, year-round. Like I said, local and an express, and that would actually only cost $211,000 for that. And the Ward 2 shuttle would be the most expensive, because this would be basically starting from scratch, a new route, 15 hours a day, 7 days a week, 3 buses on weekdays, 2 on weekends, and we're talking about $778,000. Total $2.2 million. I know you've got sticker shock. Don't worry, it's not going to cost us all that a year. That would be, yeah, $2.2 million a year. And so the two biggest ones are the M5 and the Ward 2.
Now, right now, we're not paying any of this.
Right now we're paying.
Throw that out there.
Right now we're paying six figures towards the N5, and we're also paying $250,000 to run the dial-a-ride system. But you know, we're in the game, but we're only tangentially in the game.
Does the dial-a-ride go away?
No, I wouldn't propose that, but it might help folks who would otherwise need a dial-a-ride. So these are the two biggest chunks here, and the nice thing about this is, we can partner with other entities to make this happen. Nobody would expect the city of New Brunswick to run both of these routes entirely by ourselves and go to North Brunswick, to go to Trader Joe's and Walmart, and basically pick up what the county has been doing. So how do we pay for it? There's obviously grants from the federal and state government, which is an important component. Support from businesses and buildings that will benefit. So that's a key. Some of these supermarkets would really benefit from having regular bus service. Some of these you know, apartment buildings that are going up would benefit from having a bus stop right outside. It would be something that they'd be able to you know, get more people to live there, and also get less cars there. You know, something that we often hear at the Planning and Zoning Board is a debate over how much is the demand for parking and the traffic congestion that's going to result from the building. If some of these developers or you know, apartment owners were able to chip in, it would help make this possible. But the big thing would be shared service partners. So the proposal for the M5 local route is going to go through North Brunswick, and it's basically an extension of the county's existing route, so split the cost 3 ways: North Brunswick, Middlesex County, and New Brunswick. The proposed second ward shuttle would actually serve some of Rutgers, so if you take a look at your map, you'll see it would add service to the Jameson area, and there's also a project under construction right now, a really amazing project, the Rutgers Adult Autism Center, which is on Nickel Avenue. And I don't know if Rutgers has any plans to provide bus service there, but there's none existing. So this would be a way to have Rutgers and North Brunswick become partners. And so it could split the cost 3 ways with them. So instead of the 2.2 million, New Brunswick's share would be down to 1.2 million. And North Brunswick would be picking up that much, Rutgers would be picking up that much, and Middlesex County would be picking up that much. This is just a vision. It could be any number of things depending on how motivated the partners are to see this happen. So this is just a vision for what could be, and I'm going to close up by telling you guys that even if we can't do it all right away, we must do something right now. The world is changing. People who are moving to New Brunswick want different things than people wanted 30 or 40 or 50 years ago. And it's really important that we move our city forward before we get left behind. You guys know the feeling when you miss a bus. We don't want to miss the bus. This is what the future is going to look like. It's going to be transit. And in order for us to get to that vision of a wonderful light rail system that's going to have tens of thousands of riders and connect New Brunswick to other communities and help alleviate the traffic congestion in downtown and on Route 18, we need to show that we're moving forward. And so part of that is going to be to make some moves. Maybe not all of this right away, but make some moves to expand transit, because if we don't, it's actually going to contract. Like I said, the county is phasing down their shuttles, and we have a lot of room for improvement here, and it's, I think, time for the city to step up and do it. I want to thank you all so much for allowing me to give this presentation, and I want to thank everybody who helped me put it together. Had some great conversations and learned a lot. I still have a lot to learn, but I hope that I was able to share some information with you that will help you guys to keep doing the good work you're doing and help make transit a bigger part of our city. Thank you.
Thank you, Charles. That was a very informative presentation, a lot to absorb. So, very ambitious, but it's got some good ideas in there. If I could get a copy of that, just
I'll email it to everybody.
perfect. Thank you.
Are you going to present this to Rutgers, to Middlesex County, to other agencies also?
If they'll let me.
Okay.
Just a comment to say I'm glad you're supporting Mayor Cahill's idea to have color-coded shuttle systems. He's been asking for that for years. So you and me are on the same
agree on
page.
something?
Good to know.
It was a very good presentation, very informative. Would love to have a shuttle system like that, but cost is an issue. And you talked about the M5. You and I had a conversation one day about that. I thought we were probably looking at scaling down the routes, and that looks like the way we're going to be going, and just focusing that just on the Jersey Avenue corridor, because that's where the ridership is and the need is, because that's the only shuttle service out there. Whereas down in the Second Ward area, there are other services that can provide the transit service if you don't have that there. So we try to get better head time, so it's not a 2-hour ride around town. But even just doing that loop over there, they're estimating that it's like about 35 minutes each way. So that's still an hour to make a full complete loop over there. And that cost is over $200,000 a year just for that. So this stuff is expensive, and there aren't a whole lot of grants. That's one of the reasons the county's kind of pulling back from this, is that they've had some grant funding in the past that's been shrinking. I think they may have a different focus, as you were referencing in there, as to where they want to go with this. The other thing I would say, I don't know if the city of New Brunswick can be the agency that leads this. Obviously, we'd be very involved and so forth, but what you propose here is a regional system. A lot of this system is outside of New Brunswick, whether it goes into North Brunswick, or you talk about going to Highland Park, there's probably some places in Somerset to go. It needs to be regionally directed. It's probably more appropriate that county or New Jersey Transit do something like this. But I mean, I agree with you that we need to do more with transit, with the bike system and so forth. You can only build so many parking decks. The roads are only so wide. You can only get so many cars in here. That we do need to improve the system. So there were a lot of good ideas. They did a good job. I will say, when I asked you how long this was going to be, you said it was going to be 15 to 20 minutes. But
I had an extra month to.
I was interested through the whole thing.
That was good.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. Thank you for your help.
So I enjoyed it. I would also, I got one challenge and then I would say one plus. So the challenge to Danielle's comments about the homeless population, I can imagine this impacting us in a challenging way, with us kind of being the target or the hub for homeless all throughout the county and beyond. I see this sort of being something that adds to that. The positive, when we say that we need to do something immediate, the first immediate thing I think that we could do is make sure that people are aware of what's actually available now. To your point, I didn't know half of these particular routes were in place already. I'm pretty sure there's a ton of residents who don't know. I've never taken the breakfast bus in the 36 years I've been living here. So I think one thing that would be, possible almost immediately is being able to provide more awareness of what's available now. Then that would also impact demand. Once people are aware of what's available, we still see these, the level of rides taking place, either increase or decrease, then we can at least get a good baseline where we need to move next. But I think that's something that everybody can do, is just share that, hey, you can take this bus here at this time.
And just on the M5 stuff, what we are talking about is potentially using Rutgers to operate that bus and potentially putting the GPS in there, so potentially using next bus for that to do that.
Wonderful. Good to hear.
Okay,
Thank you for your
before we wrap, anyone in the audience would like to comment? Please.
Yeah, when I mentioned that I was coming here today, one of my friends who rides the buses regularly, and she's disabled, I don't know to what extent you guys can influence the Jersey Transit buses, but she told me some shocking things that I didn't realize. She got on that bus, I think it's the 814, one day when it was 13 degrees, there was no heat. And she said this happens a lot because apparently they're not well maintained. When she gets off, they have to lower her down, and then she's noticed she's she's disabled. She's all the way across the street in her house, and they still haven't been able to get the platform lifted back up. And she feels bad because there's a whole busload of people just sitting there, and she's already home,
Did she ever send in the comment to New Jersey Transit, or did she ever approach them about it?
I don't know.
Because they have a website. They're very sensitive. Well, supposedly they're very sensitive to their customer service, and you wouldn't believe it, by train service. But they tend to respond. They tend to respond because when we used to run, I'm with the parking authority. We used to run the train station back in the day. It was about, I guess, 15 years ago, and they used to be on us about customer service, and they used to get reports back from the public that using it, and they used to really address all their items. So I'd be surprised if they didn't address that if she contacted them. I think through the website you can fill out a customer service survey, or even put in a question or whatever. They usually respond.
Okay, I will tell her to do that.
Yeah, I would
I'm
recommend that.
thinking buses that are that poorly maintained probably aren't good on emissions or anything else. Apparently they're pretty old. So.
New Jersey Transit has a lot of trouble, which is why our new governor just put a new head in there of that. It's a very troubled agency, and bus is probably the most troubled part of it.
Yeah, I was just wondering what the relationship is between New Brunswick, you know, with all these different systems going on.
We're just another town, so.
Okay, all righty, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Well, thank you for coming today. With that, we'll adjourn. Thank you.